Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time we're tackling something I know a lot of you out there are really interested in, and that's how to get a more even skin tone.
Yeah.
And we're really going to be focusing in on darker skin tones and how to safely and effectively treat some of the issues that come up with pigmentation. We've got tons of great research to go through to help us understand, first off, what causes those pigmentation irregularities in the first place. Then we're going to get into some of those kind of controversial ingredients that are sometimes used. We've all heard about them, hydroquinone, mercury, even monobenzene.
Yeah, those are big ones.
Yeah. And then finally, we'll uncover some safer alternatives for achieving that glow,
For sure. For sure.
So where do we even begin with this? I mean, it seems like there's so much to cover.
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is really understand how melanin works.
Oh.
Melanin is the pigment that gives our skin its color right. But it's not just about aesthetics or giving us our unique shades. It actually acts as a protective shield against the sun's rays. And the amount and type of melanin we produce is actually influenced by our ancestry.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, it really is. It's like our skin carries a story of where we come from.
Right. Okay. So then how does that, how does melanin sometimes lead to like hyperpigmentation?
It's like our skin's defense mechanism. Sometimes going a little bit into overdrive, triggers like inflammation, sun exposure, hormonal shifts. These things can all cause our skin to produce excess melanin in certain areas. And that's what leads to those darker spots or patches that a lot of people see.
So it's like your body's trying to protect itself, but it kind of backfires a little bit.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, let's break down these triggers one by one then. So starting with inflammation, how does that affect melanin production?
So think about when you get a cut or a burn or even like a really bad pimple. What happens?
It gets red and inflamed.
Exactly. And your skin kicks off this inflammatory response to try and heal itself. And sometimes during that healing process, the cells that produce melanin, they get a little overzealous and pump out more melanin than usual.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to protect the injured area,
Oh, I see.
But it can end up leaving behind a darker mark.
Okay, so it's like almost like a scar, but from the inside out in a way.
Right, exactly.
And then what about sun exposure? I mean, we've all heard, too much sun is bad for our skin, but how does it specifically lead to, uneven skin tone?
Well, those UV rays from the sun are really powerful. They can actually stimulate those melanin-producing cells to produce more melanin, which is why we tan.
Right.
But if we overdo it, it can lead to sunspots, age spots, and those really tend to show up in those areas that are most exposed to the sun.
So it's not even just about getting a sunburn. You're saying it's like that cumulative exposure.
Exactly. Even small amounts over time can really add up and contribute to those changes in pigmentation.
Okay, so that's a good reminder then to really be diligent about wearing sunscreen every single day, not just when you're out, for a long time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Sunscreen is your best friend.
Now let's talk about hormonal changes. I'm really interested in this whole thing with melasma, this hormonal pigmentation.
Oh, yeah. Melasma is a really common one.
Yeah. It can appear during pregnancy or with certain medications. What's going on there?
Hormones are powerful things. Those shifts in estrogen and progesterone can really trigger melanin production. And melasma often shows up in a very specific pattern. Those brown or grayish patches usually on the face. It's like our skin is reflecting what's going on internally.
That is so interesting. And then there's something called post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, or PIH. I know that's more common in people with darker skin tone.
Exactly. PIH is essentially what happens after your skin has had some kind of inflammation or injury, right?
Right.
It's like those dark marks that get left behind as your skin's trying to heal itself. And yeah, people with darker skin tones are more prone to it because their melanocytes are naturally more active.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about hyperpigmentation specifically, but what about just uneven skin tone in general?
Well, uneven skin tone is basically just inconsistent melanin distribution. Instead of being produced evenly throughout the skin, some areas are producing more than others.
And what causes that uneven distribution? I know the research mentions things like environmental factors, aging, and even the skincare products we use.
It's true. Think of your skin as like a delicate ecosystem. Everything it comes into contact with can affect its balance. Pollution, UV rays, even stress can disrupt the way melanin is produced and distributed.
Oh, wow. I never thought about stress like that.
It's a big factor.
And then, of course, we can't forget about aging.
Oh, yeah. As we get older, our skin's ability to regenerate and distribute melanin evenly just naturally declines.
Right. Which is why we tend to see more of those age spots and just less of a uniform complexion as we get older.
Exactly. It's just part of the natural process.
Okay, so then how can our skincare routines actually contribute to pigmentation problems? I mean, it seems like we're trying to take care of our skin.
We are, but sometimes we can overdo it.
Okay.
Harsh products or treatments can actually strip away our skin's natural oils and disrupt that protective barrier. And then that can trigger inflammation and make us more susceptible to pigmentation issues.
So it's like we're accidentally working against ourselves in a way.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about finding that balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've laid a really good foundation here, I think, by understanding these common causes of uneven skin tone. But I know a lot of people are curious about those controversial skin lightening ingredients that are sometimes used to try and address these concerns.
Right, and it's really important to approach those with caution, especially for people with darker skin tones.
Yeah, absolutely. So the three ingredients that I see mentioned the most often are hydroquinone, mercury, and then monobenzene. Let's start with hydroquinone. What exactly is it and how does it work?
So hydroquinone is a chemical that's used in a lot of skin lightening products.
Okay.
And it works by inhibiting an enzyme called tyrosinase, which plays a really big role in the production of melanin.
Okay.
So you can kind of think of it as an off switch for melanin production.
Okay, so it's like putting the brakes on melanin. But what are the potential downsides of using hydroquinone, especially for those with darker skin?
Well, one of the big ones is a condition called ochronosis.
Okay.
And that's where prolonged use of hydroquinone, especially in higher concentrations, can actually cause the skin to darken and thicken, especially in people with darker complexions.
Oh, wow. That's the opposite of what you want.
I know, right? It's like the very thing you're trying to avoid ends up happening, and it can be really hard to treat.
So it's not just a cosmetic thing, it's like actually damaging.
Exactly. And then you also have the risk of other side effects like redness, itching, irritation. And even more concerning is that hydroquinone is actually banned or restricted in a lot of countries because of safety concerns.
Oh, wow.
There's a lot of debate about its long-term effects and whether it could potentially even be carcinogenic.
So it's definitely something you want to talk to your doctor about before using.
Definitely.
Okay, now let's talk about mercury. I think that one's the one that people get the most scared about.
Yeah, and for good reason. Mercury is a heavy metal, and it's incredibly toxic. It should never be applied to the skin.
Right.
But unfortunately, it's sometimes found in these illegal or unregulated skin lightening products because it can interfere with melanin production.
How does it do that? And what are the risks of actually using products that contain it?
Well, mercury basically poisons those melanocytes, those pigment-producing cells. It disrupts their function and prevents them from making melanin.
Okay.
But the problem is that mercury doesn't just stay on the surface of your skin.
Right.
It can be absorbed into your bloodstream and accumulate in your body. And that can lead to some really serious health problems like kidney damage, neurological issues, even developmental problems.
So it's not worth the risk at all.
Not at all. It's really important to be careful about what you're putting on your skin and to only buy products from reputable sources.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, thankfully mercury is banned in most countries because of its toxicity.
Right.
But it's still important to be aware that it can be found in counterfeit or unregulated products, especially in some parts of the world where there's still a demand for these types of products.
Exactly. It's a good reminder to always be vigilant.
So that's mercury. And then finally, let's move on to monobenzene. What's the deal with that one?
Okay, so monobenzene is another chemical that's been used in skin lightening treatments, mostly for a condition called vitiligo. And that's where patches of skin lose their pigment.
Right.
And monobenzene works by permanently destroying melanocytes.
Permanently.
Permanently. It's pretty drastic.
Wow. So how does it achieve that, and what are the potential risks of using it?
Well, it basically acts like a seek and destroy missile for melanocytes. It binds to those pigment-producing cells and causes them to self-destruct. So while it can be helpful in treating vitiligo, where the goal is to actually even out skin tone by depigmenting those remaining pigmented areas, it's super risky to use for general skin lightening.
Right, because it's permanent.
Exactly. If it's not applied with extreme precision, it can create an uneven or blotchy appearance.
So it seems like all three of these ingredients come with some serious baggage. It makes you really think twice about what you're putting on your skin.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power when it comes to skincare.
For sure. So we've talked about these ingredients you really want to avoid or you want to proceed with extreme caution.
Right.
So now let's switch gears and talk about some of the safer and more natural alternatives that people can use for addressing pigmentation and achieving a more even skin tone.
Yeah, let's get into the good stuff.
Okay, I'm seeing niacinamide mentioned a lot. What can you tell us about that?
Niacinamide is a form of vitamin B3, And it's great for improving skin tone and texture.
Okay.
It can help with redness, minimizing pores, and even boosting collagen production. Yeah, it's a real multitasker. But when it comes to pigmentation, it's really good at reducing hyperpigmentation and helping to create a more even complexion.
So how does it actually work on those dark spots?
So unlike some of the other ingredients we talked about, it doesn't actually shut down melanin production completely.
Okay.
Instead, it works by kind of intercepting the transfer of melanin to the surface layers of the skin. So it's like redirecting traffic.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right. It's a much gentler approach.
Okay. And what about vitamin C? We hear about that one all the time.
Oh, yeah. Vitamin C is a classic for a reason. It's a powerful antioxidant and helps protect our skin from environmental damage. But it also plays a big role in collagen synthesis, which keeps our skin looking firm and youthful.
Okay.
And for pigmentation, it's known for its ability to brighten the complexion and fade dark spots over time.
So it's good for preventing future damage as well as addressing existing damage.
Exactly.
So how does it actually work on those dark spots?
Well, it does a couple of things. First, it inhibits the activity of tyrosinase, that enzyme we talked about earlier that plays a key role in melanin production.
Right.
And then second, it's a potent antioxidant.
Yeah.
So it helps neutralize that damage from free radicals, which are those unstable molecules that can contribute to premature aging and hyperpigmentation.
So it's like a two-pronged attack.
Yeah, it's attacking from all angles.
I like it. Okay, now I see azelaic acid mentioned as an option as well.
Azelaic acid is a really great one, especially for people with sensitive skin. It's a naturally occurring acid found in grains, and it has this amazing ability to address both acne and hyperpigmentation.
Oh, wow. So you get 2 for 1.
I know, right? It's a real winner.
And how does it do both of those things?
Well, it has both anti-inflammatory and skin lightening properties. So it helps to calm down inflammation, which, as we know, is a trigger for hyperpigmentation. And then it also inhibits that tyrosinase activity, which reduces melanin production.
So it's calming things down and also preventing those dark spots from forming. Okay, now this next one sounds really interesting. Licorice root extract.
Ooh, licorice root extract is a really cool one. It's been used in traditional medicine for a long time, and it's gaining popularity in skincare because it's great for brightening the complexion and fading dark spots.
So what makes it so effective for pigmentation?
The star ingredient in licorice root extract is a compound called glabardin.
Okay.
And glabardin inhibits tyrosinase activity.
Oh, so it's working in a similar way to some of the other ingredients we talked about.
Exactly. It's like a natural off switch for melanin production.
That's awesome. And then finally we have kojic acid. What can you tell us about that one?
Kojic acid is another natural ingredient that's becoming really popular. It's derived from fungi, and it's great for lightening the skin and reducing hyperpigmentation.
So how does kojic acid work? Is it another tyrosinase inhibitor?
You got it. It helps reduce the production of melanin and brighten the skin. And as a bonus, it's also a powerful antioxidant, so it's helping to protect the skin from further damage.
So it's preventing and also treating those dark spots.
Exactly. It's working on multiple levels.
Wow. So it seems like we have a whole arsenal of safer, more natural options here for tackling pigmentation and achieving a more even skin tone. This is great news.
It is. It's really exciting to see so many effective alternatives out there that really prioritize both beauty and well-being.
Absolutely. So now that we've covered all these different ingredients and approaches, I think it's really clear that achieving an even skin tone, it requires a really holistic approach.
Oh, definitely. It's about so much more than just the products that we use. It's about taking care of our overall health and well-being.
I think that's a great point to end this part of the discussion on.
You know, it's amazing how interconnected our bodies are. Like stress, it can actually show up on our skin.
Oh, totally. I've definitely noticed that. Like when I'm stressed out, my skin just doesn't look as good.
Right. It's a good reminder that skincare isn't just about what we put on our skin. It's also about how we take care of ourselves overall.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's also important to acknowledge that, there's this whole societal pressure to have perfect skin.
Oh, absolutely.
And it can be really tough, especially when you're constantly seeing these images that are, airbrushed and edited, and they're just not realistic.
Totally. And it can be especially challenging for people with darker skin tones.
Yeah.
Because there's this whole history of colorism and discrimination based on skin color.
Yeah.
Right. And that can make it even harder to embrace and celebrate your natural complexion.
Yeah, it's sad that those pressures exist, and I think it's really important to challenge those narrow beauty standards.
Absolutely.
I need to celebrate diversity in all its forms.
True beauty is about individuality and feeling confident in your own skin.
Totally. So let's get back to some of those safer alternatives that we were talking about for addressing pigmentation.
Okay.
We had that whole list: niacinamide, vitamin C, azelaic acid, licorice root extract, and kojic acid.
Right. So many good ones.
So how can people actually incorporate these ingredients into their skincare routine?
Well, let's start with niacinamide. Niacinamide is pretty versatile. It's generally well tolerated. You can find it in serums, moisturizers, even toners.
Okay, and what about the concentration? I mean, I see different percentages on the products. What's a good starting point?
A good starting point is usually around 5% niacinamide.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can gradually increase the concentration as your skin gets used to it.
Okay, so start low and go slow.
Exactly. Especially if you have sensitive skin.
And can you use it both morning and night?
Yeah, you can. Niacinamide plays well with other ingredients, so you can pretty much incorporate it into both your AM and PM routines.
Perfect. Okay, what about vitamin C? That one I know can be a little bit tricky because it's so unstable.
It is a little bit finicky, yeah. Vitamin C is a really potent antioxidant, but it can break down pretty easily when it's exposed to light and air.
Right.
So packaging is super important. Look for products that are in opaque or airtight containers to keep that vitamin C stable.
So you don't want it in like a clear jar or a dropper bottle or something like that.
Exactly. And in terms of concentration, something around 10 to 20% is usually a good range.
Okay.
But as with anything new, it's always best to start low and gradually increase.
And when should you apply vitamin C?
Vitamin C is a great addition to your morning skincare routine. Putting it on before your sunscreen can actually help to boost your sun protection.
Oh, that's great. Dynamic duo?
Right.
Okay, what about azelaic acid? How can people use that in their routine?
Azelaic acid is really great for tackling both acne and hyperpigmentation. You can find it over the counter or by prescription. It usually comes in a cream or a gel.
And how often should you use it?
Once or twice a day is usually sufficient.
Okay.
It kind of depends on the concentration and what your dermatologist recommends. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that azelaic acid can be a little drying, so that it's always a good idea to follow up with a moisturizer.
Oh, that's a good tip. And can you use it with other active ingredients like niacinamide or vitamin C?
Yeah, you can. Azelaic acid usually plays well with others, but it's always best to check with your dermatologist just to make sure.
Yeah, good point. Okay, now let's move on to licorice root extract. Any tips for incorporating that one into a routine?
Licorice root extract is really gentle but effective for hyperpigmentation. You can find it in serums, creams, masks, all kinds of things. Just look for products that have a standardized extract with a high concentration of glycerin, because that's the active compound that does all the work.
And can you layer it with other brightening ingredients? Like, would it be okay to use it with niacinamide or vitamin C?
Yeah, you can usually layer it without any problems, but it's always a good idea to patch test first, just in case you have sensitive skin.
Okay, and then last but not least, kojic acid.
Kojic acid is another potent brightener, but with this one, you definitely want to start slowly.
Okay.
Begin with a low concentration and see how your skin reacts before increasing it. And as always, do a patch test before applying it all over your face.
Good advice. Are there any ingredients that you shouldn't combine with kojic acid?
It's best to avoid using it with harsh exfoliants or anything else that could be irritating. Remember, we want to be gentle with our skin.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've covered a lot of ground here. I think it's clear that achieving an even skin tone requires a multifaceted approach. It's not just what we put on our skin. It's also about taking care of our overall health and well-being.
Absolutely. And you mentioned earlier that lifestyle factors like diet and stress management can play a role too.
Right. So let's talk about diet first. How can what we eat affect our skin tone?
Well, our skin needs the right nutrients to thrive, just like any other organ in our body. So a diet that's rich in antioxidants, healthy fats, and vitamins can make a big difference. Think about colorful fruits and vegetables, fatty fish nuts, and seeds.
So it's about what we put in our bodies as much as what we put on them.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's stress. Stress can really wreak havoc on our skin, can trigger inflammation, and make pigmentation issues worse.
How does stress actually affect our skin at a cellular level? What's going on there?
Well, when we're stressed, our bodies release a hormone called cortisol.
Right.
And cortisol can disrupt the balance in our skin. It can increase oil production, which can lead to breakouts, and can also interfere with our skin's ability to repair itself.
So it's like stress is actually preventing our skin from healing properly.
Kind of, yeah. It's not doing us any favors.
So what are some good ways to manage stress?
Oh, there are so many. It's really about finding what works for you. Exercise, yoga, meditation, spending time in nature, listening to music, reading, anything that helps you to relax and unwind.
It's about finding that inner peace.
Exactly. And when you take care of your mental and emotional health, it shows up in your physical health too.
Including your skin.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that, true beauty isn't about flawlessness.
Right.
It's about celebrating what makes you unique.
Yeah, it's about embracing those imperfections.
Exactly. And it's about shifting your focus from external validation to internal acceptance. Learning to love the skin you're in.
I love that. I think that's a perfect note to end this part of the discussion on. And we are back for the third and final part of our deep dive, all about achieving a more even skin tone.
And we're ready to wrap things up with some really important tips and insights.
Yes. So let's talk about sun protection. We touched on it briefly in the earlier parts, but I think it's worth diving a little deeper.
I agree. Sun protection is absolutely essential when it comes to maintaining an even skin tone and preventing those dark spots from popping up. It's really your first line of defense.
Okay, so we know we should be wearing sunscreen, but with so many options out there, how do we choose the right one? What should we be looking for?
Well, the SPF number is important, of course. That tells you how much protection you're getting from those UVB rays, which are the ones that cause sunburn. But it's not the whole story.
Right.
You also want to make sure you're choosing a broad-spectrum sunscreen, which means it protects against both UVA and UVB rays.
Okay, so broad spectrum is key.
Absolutely. UVA rays are the ones that penetrate deeper into the skin, and they're the ones that contribute to premature aging and hyperpigmentation.
So it's like a double whammy.
Exactly. You need protection on both fronts.
Okay. And then what about the type of sunscreen? There are so many different formulations. Creams, lotions, sprays, mineral chemical. It can get a little overwhelming.
I know it's a lot. Honestly, the best sunscreen is the one that you'll actually use.
Yeah.
So find something that you like the feel of that fits into your routine. Whether you prefer a mineral sunscreen, a chemical sunscreen, a spray, a lotion, whatever it is, as long as you're using it consistently, that's what matters most.
Okay, so find what works for you and stick with it. And how much sunscreen should we actually be using? I feel like I never know if I'm using enough.
That's a really common question. And most people actually underapply sunscreen, which means they're not getting the full protection. A good rule of thumb is to use about a shot glass full for your body and a nickel-sized amount for your face.
Okay, that's helpful. And then how often should we be reapplying?
You should reapply every 2 hours or even more often if you're swimming or sweating a lot.
So basically just make it a habit to reapply throughout the day.
Exactly, especially if you're spending time outdoors.
Okay, great. Now let's switch gears a little bit and talk about tailoring skincare routines to specific skin types. Because I know not all skin is created equal.
Definitely not. Everyone's skin is different, and what works for one person might not work for another.
Right.
Your skin type, your age, any specific concerns you have like acne or dryness, all of these things play a role in figuring out the best skincare routine for you.
So how can people figure out their skin type?
Well, you can do some research online, but the best thing to do is to see a dermatologist.
Okay.
They can really assess your skin, help you figure out what type it is, and recommend products and treatments that are going to be most effective for you.
So it's like personalized skincare.
Exactly.
I like it. Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to touch on one last thing, and that's the importance of patience.
Yes. Patience is key when it comes to skincare.
Because we all want those quick fixes, but skincare is really a journey.
It is. It takes time for those ingredients to work their magic and for you to see results. You can't expect to see changes overnight.
It's like you're planting a seed, and you have to nurture it and give it time to grow.
That's a great analogy. Skincare is a marathon, not a sprint.
I love that. So be patient. Be consistent with your routine, and remember there's no such thing as perfect skin.
That's so important to remember. We're all perfectly imperfect.
I love that. Well, I think that's a great place to end our deep dive into achieving a more even skin tone. We've covered so much ground, and I hope everyone listening feels empowered to take control of their skincare journey.
Me too. Remember, it's all about finding what works best for you and being kind to your skin.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.